Listen carefully, because jealousy is not created by what you have. It is triggered by what others feel they lack when they look at you. You don't need to brag. You don't need to dominate. You don't even need to speak much. There are hidden psychological switches inside every human being, ancient unconscious mechanisms that, when activated, awaken envy, insecurity, and comparison. Most people trigger jealousy accidentally, but some people do it without trying. Tonight you'll learn 7 dark psychological secrets that make anyone feel jealous, without aggression, without cruelty, and without ever lowering yourself. This is not manipulation, this is self-mastery. Jealousy does not come from hatred, it comes from self-confrontation. Most people assume jealousy is about envy toward another person, but that's only the surface story. Beneath it lies something far more uncomfortable. When someone feels jealous, it isn't because they despise you. It's because your presence disrupts the story they tell themselves about who they are and who they could have been. Your existence becomes evidence. Evidence of a missed potential they once felt burning inside but slowly buried under excuses. Evidence of an unfulfilled identity, the life they imagined, the courage they postponed, the risks they avoided. Evidence of a version of themselves they abandoned when comfort became safer than growth. Jealousy emerges at the exact moment when comparison turns inward. They are no longer looking at you. They are looking at themselves, and they don't like what they see. This is why jealousy often feels irrational, sudden, or excessive. It isn't a calculated emotion, it's a reflex. A psychological defense mechanism that activates when the ego is threatened. Instead of asking, "Why does this bother me?" the mind asks, "How do I protect myself from this discomfort?" And the easiest protection is projection. They project frustration onto you. They project resentment onto your success. They project judgment onto your confidence, because accepting the truth would require accountability, and accountability requires awareness. Jealousy arises when your existence becomes a mirror they did not ask to look into. A mirror that reflects not just what they lack, but what they once desired. A mirror that reminds them of choices made in fear, moments of hesitation, and years spent delaying their own becoming. And here's the truth most people never realize: the more unconscious a person is, the more violently they react to that mirror. An aware person feels discomfort and grows from it. An unconscious person feels discomfort and attacks its source. They don't say, "I feel inadequate." They say, "You're arrogant." They don't say, "I'm afraid I wasted time." They say, "You think you're better than everyone." This is why jealousy often comes disguised as criticism, sarcasm, mockery, or passive aggression. It's not about bringing you down. It's about numbing the pain of self-recognition. The 7 secrets you're about to hear work because they don't engage in surface-level competition. They don't rely on status, wealth, or attention. Instead, they activate archetypal comparison, the deepest kind of comparison rooted in identity, purpose, and inner alignment. These secrets bypass logic. They don't argue with the conscious mind. They speak directly to the subconscious, the place where unfinished dreams live, where suppressed desires wait, and where unexpressed potential quietly aches. That's why jealousy triggered by these forces feels intense and personal, because it isn't about what you have. It's about what your presence awakens, and what others have been avoiding within themselves. Nothing ignites jealousy faster than emotional self-sufficiency, because it removes the one thing most people rely on without realizing it: emotional exchange as survival. When you no longer seek approval, you break an invisible contract. When you don't chase validation, you exit a shared dependency. When your mood remains steady regardless of attention, praise, or neglect, you demonstrate an inner stability that others secretly crave. And without ever saying a word, you communicate something deeply unsettling to insecure minds. I do not need you to feel whole. For many people, relationships are not built on connection, but on mutual reassurance. They bond by sharing doubts, trading insecurities, and confirming each other's worth. This creates a sense of safety, but also a quiet addiction. Approval becomes currency. Attention becomes nourishment. So when you arrive already emotionally complete, you disrupt this unspoken emotional economy. You are not bargaining. You are not negotiating your worth. You are not asking to be chosen. And that absence of need is profoundly destabilizing. They begin to wonder, often unconsciously, why doesn't this person need reassurance like I do? Why aren't they trying to impress, perform, or explain themselves? Why do they seem untouched by things that control me? Your calm becomes a mirror. Your independence becomes contrast. And in that contrast, a silent comparison forms. What do they have that I don't? That question is the birthplace of jealousy. Not because you took something away from them, but because you revealed something missing within them. You exposed a dependency they didn't know they had, a hunger they've been feeding through others instead of facing within themselves. Your emotional self-sufficiency forces a realization that wholeness is an inside job, and for those who haven't done that work, your presence feels less like inspiration and more like a quiet threat. The human ego can tolerate success. What it cannot tolerate is unexpected transformation. Success, when anticipated, is manageable. People can rationalize it. They tell themselves stories. They worked harder, they had advantages, they got lucky. These explanations protect the ego. They allow others to remain psychologically intact while witnessing your rise. That's why announcing your goals gives people time to adjust emotionally. They prepare. They recalibrate expectations. They quietly place you into a future category where your growth feels less threatening. In a strange way, announcing your intentions gives others control. It allows their minds to stay ahead of the shock. But when you disappear internally, when you stop explaining, stop forecasting, stop narrating your journey, and then return evolved, you bypass all those defenses. There is no emotional preparation, no gradual adjustment, no story ready to explain the difference. Sudden improvement doesn't just surprise people, it attacks identity, because now, the comparison becomes unavoidable. They think, they were just like me. We struggled with the same limits. We stood in the same place. And then the unspoken question emerges, if they changed, why didn't I? This is where jealousy deepens. Not as envy, but as self-accusation. Your quiet growth becomes undeniable evidence of their stagnation. Not because you are superior, but because you chose movement where they chose comfort. And comfort, once exposed, no longer feels safe. What hurts them most is not your progress. It's the collapse of their excuses. They can no longer say, it wasn't possible. They can no longer say, the timing wasn't right. They can no longer say, no one like us gets that far. Because you did. And jealousy doesn't say, I want what you have. That would still preserve hope. Instead, it whispers something far more painful. Why didn't I become that? That question carries regret. It carries lost time. It carries the weight of unrealized potential. This is why quiet growth is so powerful. When you evolve in silence, your transformation arrives as a fact, not a forecast. Facts don't argue. They don't negotiate. They simply exist. And existence alone is enough to destabilize fragile identities. So never broadcast your evolution. Never narrate your becoming. Let people discover it the moment they meet the new version of you. Because when growth arrives unannounced, it doesn't just impress, it reveals. Watch more than you react. This single shift changes the entire psychological dynamic between you and others. Most people live in a constant state of reaction, responding emotionally, defending reflexively, expressing impulses the moment they arise. Reaction is automatic. Observation is deliberate. And the moment you choose observation over reaction, you step out of the emotional crowd and into a position of quiet dominance. When you observe people deeply, without judgment, without interruption, without the need to correct or impress, you become something rare, a psychological mirror. You are no longer participating in their emotional rhythm, you are witnessing it. And being witnessed, truly witnessed, is uncomfortable for those who have never turned inward. People feel exposed when they are seen clearly, even if you say nothing at all. Your silence does not feel empty to them, it feels full. Full of awareness, full of perception. They sense that you notice what others overlook: subtle shifts in tone, emotional contradictions, patterns repeated unconsciously. Your presence becomes reflective. Without intending to, you invite people into self-observation. They begin to notice themselves more around you. Their habits, their emotional loops, their inconsistencies between what they say and what they do. This isn't because you accuse them, but because your attention makes avoidance impossible. And that awareness creates unease. Why? Because most people are not avoiding others, they are avoiding themselves. Self-awareness demands responsibility. It asks uncomfortable questions. It reveals motivations people would rather ignore. So instead, many stay busy reacting, speaking, performing, anything to avoid stillness. But you disrupt that escape. When you do not rush to respond, when you don't fill silence with reassurance or agreement, the other person is left alone with their own inner noise. And that is where discomfort arises, not from you, but from what your presence awakens. Jealousy begins to grow when someone senses something they cannot name but deeply feel. This person understands me and I don't understand myself. That realization creates a psychological imbalance. You are positioned as the observer, they feel observed. And in human psychology, the one who sees holds more power than the one who performs. The observer holds power without force. You don't need to dominate conversations. You don't need to assert authority. You don't need to correct or expose. Your restraint becomes your leverage. Power without force is the most threatening kind because it cannot be challenged directly. There is nothing to argue against, nothing to resist. Your awareness simply exists, and that existence destabilizes fragile egos. This is why people may feel uneasy, defensive, or even jealous around you without understanding why. They are responding not to your actions, but to the quiet realization that you are inwardly anchored while they are still searching. And nothing unsettles the unconscious mind more than standing in the presence of someone who sees clearly and remains unmoved. People become jealous when they realize you are not emotionally invested in winning approval, status, or popularity, because most of the world is quietly enslaved to those pursuits. From an early age, people are trained subtly and relentlessly to measure their worth through external signals. Attention becomes validation, recognition becomes identity, status becomes safety. So when you move through life without visibly caring about these markers, it creates a psychological disturbance. You are not rebelling loudly. You are simply not participating. And that absence is louder than any declaration. When you don't compete, you remove yourself from comparison. When you don't compare, you stop measuring your value against others. When you don't chase, you signal that your sense of meaning is internally sourced. This places you outside the hierarchy most people organize their lives around. Hierarchies give structure to insecure minds. They tell people where they stand, who they should envy, and who they should imitate. Opting out of that structure feels, to them, like stepping outside reality itself. This terrifies people who built their identity around ranking, who they are above, who they are below, and how visible they are within the social order. Your detachment introduces a dangerous question into their inner world. If someone can live without obsessing over approval, then maybe approval was never the point. That thought destabilizes years of effort, sacrifice, and performance. They begin to ask themselves questions they've been avoiding. If they don't care, why do I? What happens if none of this actually matters? Am I living for something empty? Your detachment forces existential comparison, not social comparison. And existential comparison is painful because it doesn't ask who is winning. It asks whether the game itself is worth playing. Jealousy often arises not from wanting what you have, but from realizing you escaped something they are still trapped inside. At its core, jealousy here is grief. The grief of realizing, I'm playing a game I don't even enjoy, and I don't know how to stop. The most dangerous people are not the nicest, because niceness can be a performance. It can be a mask worn to suppress anger, fear, or power. The most unsettling people are the integrated ones. The ones who have looked honestly at their darker impulses and made peace with them instead of denying them. When you are aware of your darkness but not controlled by it, you radiate a grounded authenticity that cannot be faked. You don't overcompensate with forced kindness. You don't rush to prove you're harmless. You don't posture as virtuous. You are calm but not weak, and that balance sends a very clear signals you know what you're capable of, and you've chosen restraint. This unsettles people who are split inside. One part of them performs goodness for approval, while another part silently stores resentment, envy, and unexpressed power. Being around someone whole confronts that split. Your presence exposes the cost of suppression. They sense it immediately, often without words. This person knows their power and doesn't fear it. And that realization triggers jealousy at the deepest level, because it reflects a freedom they have denied themselves. These secrets work on anyone because they never attack, dominate, or humiliate. They activate self-awareness. Jealousy is never really about you. It is about what your presence awakens in others. When you embody emotional independence, silent confidence, quiet evolution, and inner authority, you become a living question mark in the minds of those around you. And the human ego hates unanswered questions, especially the ones that point inward. If people feel jealous around you, it doesn't mean you are cruel or arrogant. It means you are unapologetically aligned. Never dim your depth to soothe fragile egos. Never shrink yourself to preserve someone else's comfort. The goal was never to be liked, admired, or approved of. The goal was to be whole. And wholeness, unperformed, unashamed, and unafraid, is the rarest, most destabilizing, and most envied state of all.